Hey everyone. So, this is an update on the status of my project and all that I have just learned and soaked up and processed in this past week. And though usually my videos are more upbeat and bright and lively and cheerful, and I have this big bright smile on my face, I have to be candid and say that it's not always going to be an upbeat, bright, and smiley, bubbly journey ahead. And I've known this anyway since day one. This week it brought me face to face with that, or at least brought up a few emotions and a few experiences that just reminded me and reinforced that reality. And so this week I was fortunate to attend day one of a 2 day training on leading and learning for multicultural work settings and workplaces. And it's developed and facilitated by two dynamic women from Cultures Connecting, which is an organization based out here in Seattle, devoted to helping other organizations build cultural competency so that their employees and leaders will be more culturally competent. And they do this session broken up into two parts. The first part focused on awareness. The second part focused on advocacy and action. And part one is day one, and it's all about just sitting and not sitting with things, reflecting on what it means to have privilege. And there's a privilege pie exercise where you slice up the pie of examples of privilege in our culture, in our country, and where we fall, and you identify with certain levels of privilege and how that influences the way you're able to engage with one another, and even some of the things that you're oblivious to, because your privilege allows for you to not really have to think of or worry about or consider some of the things that folks who don't have that privilege are constantly encountering. So it was pretty good to have that. And this is not my first training. And I've been to quite a few. I always reference the Undoing Institutional Racism training that I took last summer. I went to historically Black college and university, and that was 4 years of training in a way where we were just exposed to so many texts and scholars and great thinkers and each other and our professors, all of which allowed me to really take a deeper dive under the surface layer of what it means to be a black woman in the U.S. and looking at identity, culture, racial oppression, and all these different inequities that we experience as people of color, and that that just exist in the world that we live in this world, in this country. And so having that experience really does help me to understand and process a lot of these trainings that I go to, growing up in the household that I did, and just having conversations that I've had throughout my life really allows me not to be as naive as I could have been if I had not had those experiences. But today we actually did one exercise that is interesting. I facilitated this exercise in the past, but personally I've never encountered it myself or never done it myself. And that is the privilege walk. Except this was a modified version where, based on Peggy McIntosh's Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, it lists a variety of different privileges that people experience, that some folks experience over more than others, and traditionally white people more than people of color. For example, I don't have to worry about my color when I'm purchasing something using cash, check, credit card, or if I go to the grocery store, I don't have to worry about being followed by somebody because of my color, or I don't have any difficulty securing a lawyer or a physician, just these different things. And I'm going to put a link to that actual list in the blog post. But for this version of the privilege exercise, if you will, we were all, those of us in the room, and there was a wide variety of people in the room, we all were asked to look at the list and basically rank on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 means that you do identify with those privileges, and 0 means you never identify with those privileges. You rank each one, you add up the total, and then throughout the room there's just a range of scores that people fall into throughout the room. And as I was not surprised, those of us who ranked the lowest when it comes to privilege, all of us were people of color, majority African American women. And those of us, or those of my fellow trainees in the room who had the highest scores, were all white, and they were on the opposite side of the room. And so you see this great divide. You see we're segregated. You see that this is still something that goes on. And let me just say that we all ranged in age. multiple generations. So there weren't very many people who were all one generation. It was just a mixture of people of all ages. And I noticed that actually on my side of the room, where I was one of like 4 or 5 black women, most of us looked pretty young, you know. And so I just had a moment of like raw vulnerability, you know, and it just shook me because here we are, 2014, and the Great Divide still exists. And in my mind, I'm just thinking, come on, why, right? And I know why. I know institutionally, I know structurally, systemically, I know why. But just to see it again and just to be frustrated again and to feel like, you know, I'm being reminded again of like where I fall when it comes to privilege and access, even though I have the education and I went to school, et cetera, et cetera, there's still this great divide and it's stupid, right? And it doesn't make any sense. And that's just, I can't stand it. So I know I have to deal with my own personal healing, and I'm excited to do this work moving forward in the future with a lot of folks across the country. But man, I tell you, this is not always. Anyway, I just want to be raw, vulnerable, real, upfront with you all. Not to say that I'm not in all the other videos, but that was just my experience, and it was real. And I've never had that moment in front of a whole bunch of strangers where I had to walk out of a session in the middle of a facilitation because my emotions, I felt everything from anger and frustration to pain and numbness in a matter of like 5 minutes. So, well, thank you for listening, and I look forward to sharing an update next time. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Be encouraged, stay focused, let's build, let's heal, let's do this. Bye.